Let's talk about customer objections. Mainly, what do we do when we call a shipper and they just keep shutting us down and they won't give us any more information about how to move their freight? Now, let me tell you something up front. Objections are going to be a part of life, a part of business, no matter what you are doing. People get objections about their dating life. People get objections at the gym. They get objections every phone call they make, every place that they go. You are going to have to learn how to deal with objections. But this is even more common in the shipping industry because there's a lot of competition, right? Just like there's more objections at a bar if you're trying to find a partner than if you were at the grocery store trying to find a partner, right? There's a lot more competition. So people have to put up their guard in order to protect their interests. And it's a perfectly natural thing, right? Objections are not something that we should get frustrated about because at the end of the day, objections rest with the person objecting to you, right? It has nothing to do with you as a person. It has nothing to do with your skill level, anything like that, right? Objections come from here, from the person that you're talking to. Okay, but in this video specifically, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a 3-step process for disabling these objections when you hear them on the phone, right? I could give you scripts all day. I could give you methods. I could tell you what I say. I could tell you what my sales reps say. But if you don't know the methodology behind how these scripts are produced, you'll never be able to disable an objection, right? And there's a simple 3-step process that we use in order to get by. So the number 1 step to disabling an objection is you absolutely have to find the root of the objection. You have to find where it's coming from, and only then can you figure out what you have to say to disable it. The way we do this is what I call the why onion. So it's an old therapy trick, and it's used in sales pretty commonly. And how it works is you keep asking the question why to get to the root of why somebody believes something in the way that they do. So for example, when you call a shipper, they might say, "Sorry, I don't work with brokers." You have 2 choices at that point. Number 1, you could just stop calling and say, "Okay, I give up." Number 2, you could try to figure out why that person really doesn't want to work with brokers, whether they're lying or whether something happened, by asking the question why. So in this example, when the customer said, "Well, I don't work with brokers," I would say, "Well, why don't you work with brokers?" "Oh, they're too expensive." "Why do you think they're too expensive?" Because I have to pay more than when I use Carriers Direct." "Why do you use Carriers Direct?" "Oh, because it's less money. It's less money. I told you I want to save money." "Okay, well, is there anything that carriers do that you don't necessarily like?" "Well, yeah, their communication's horrible." "Well, why is communication horrible?" "Oh, well, they don't answer my messages when I call them. It takes a lot to get through to them, and they don't send me paperwork that I need, and all of this stuff." So by constantly asking the question why, you're constantly going to uncover reasons that are behind their beliefs. And from there, you'll be able to formulate answers that will help object to them. So in the case of not wanting to use brokers, a common one that you're going to hear, I would ask them why they don't like to use brokers, and then they're going to tell me either communication or price. Now I know that my next sentence to them has to be about those things. So if they said price, and they said they don't want to pay any more money because brokers are more expensive, I would ask them a question like, "Well, how much does it cost when your stuff doesn't pick up on time because a carrier dropped the load last minute?" They would say, "Well, it costs a lot." So it probably costs more than a couple $100 in margin for a broker. And they'll say, "Well, yeah, it does." And then I'll say, "Let me ask you this. Do you know that when a carrier drops a load, they can't call somebody else to pick it up?" but a broker can. They'll say, no, I never thought of it like that. And I'll say, yeah, well, when you book a load with a broker, the broker has a special ability, a license, to book that load with another carrier if the first one falls off. So essentially, you are maximizing your chance of that load moving on time. If you go direct to a carrier, for example, you're going to have to make manual phone calls in order to cover that load with another carrier. So yes, I might be a little bit more expensive, but the security and peace of mind that you'll get when you know that I have to do all the work for you is worth a lot more than the few $100s of margin that I'm going to get as a broker. And that's an example of how to defeat that objection, right? So step 2 in objecting to a customer is in overcoming objections to a customer rather, is persistence. A lot of brokers will make one phone call, get through to somebody on the other end who's maybe not having a great day or just not in the mood to take a sales call, get rejected, and never call back that shipper. That is the biggest mistake you can ever make. Sure, you do need a little bit of timing and you do need a little bit of luck, but at the end of the day, the most persistent broker is the one who's going to win out over anybody else, right? So key number 2 to overcoming objections is going to be persistence. You have to keep calling, emailing, messaging, whatever you're doing to your prospects until they explicitly tell you, please stop calling me. You never know when that one phone call you're going to make is on a day where they have 5 shipments that need to go out and they've just been constantly screwed over by their other broker or a carrier, and you're the one that's going to step in and save the day. All right, so do not give up on calling shippers unless they explicitly tell you to stop, because that would be harassment and we don't want that. Now, the third way to handle a shipper's objection is actually pretty simple, but not a lot of people do this. And it's as simple as actually finding somebody different at the shipper who might be able to give you a little bit more information or even override some corporate policies that may or may not be in place, right? And when I say go to somebody else at the shipper, I'm not implying that you should go behind the person's back, like when we were kids and we're asking dad to do something because mom said no. It's not like that at all. But the thing is, when you make initial contact with the shipper, you don't know how long the person you're speaking to has been at the company. You don't know if the person you're speaking to even has authority to sign on new brokers, right? They might not even know what a broker is. That's very common with shipping managers, especially now when we're in the middle of the great, the great resignation, everybody's calling it. We have some accountants that are doing the job of logistics professionals. So they don't really know entirely what's going on. Okay, so when you do get that initial no, the first instinct of yours, like everybody else, is going to be to give up. And I have to encourage you, like I did in the previous step, not to give up. Instead, go look for somebody else that you can speak to, whether that's a supervisor, a manager, or even somebody below them. Because you never know what the corporate structure looks like as far as who's allowed to make the decisions that need to be made to sign you on as a broker. Right? And I can tell you many times we've spoken to people who maybe have been having a bad day, or maybe they just had a bad taste in their mouth from brokers that they worked with as early as that week, and they didn't want to sign us on as a broker. But when we spoke to somebody else, there was a completely different outlook, completely different change of attitude, and we got in with the companies that we're trying to get in with, right? And it all comes down to, like I said, being persistent and finding that right person to talk to. Finding the person to talk to is probably the most important part of this whole thing, but it's something that people give up on so quickly. All right, so if this helped, what I did was I put together a complete guide with all of the most common objections that you'll ever hear, and exactly what myself and my sales reps say in the face of these objections. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you'd like a little bit more help on this stuff, just go click the link and you can download my Shipper's Objection Eliminator. It's completely free. And if you want even more help with this stuff, you should go join my Facebook group. It's called the Freight Broker Network. There's a link for that right below as well. And that's where I hang out, and that's where all my broker friends hang out. And we can talk about brokering, sales tactics, managing carriers, all of that great stuff. Again, that's completely free. And I'd love to see you in there. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.